good morning, or whatever time of day it is where you are. Welcome. If you're new, I'm Camille with her 30 Day Singer here today, and our topic is singing myths. We'll hope to dispel some of those myths and provide some clarity, some understanding of where those myths came from, and better guidelines for you as you're learning to sing. And already have a question in the chat. So if you can help me understand, I've got a question that's asking, should you use your breath in between every note? Help me understand what you mean by that, using your breath in between every note. Um, I'll answer a question that might be your question, or it could be something a little bit different. Should you breathe between every note that you sing? No, that would be too often to breathe. But anytime we're making sound, we are using our breath. So whether we're speaking or singing, that's how we make sound, is by the breath passing through the vocal folds. The vocal folds are vibrating and essentially kind of chopping up that air into the sound wave that we hear. Um, yeah. So if you can be even more specific about what you mean by using your breath in between every note, I'd love to help answer that question. I'm just a little bit confused. Okay, so today, again, we're talking about singing myths. I'm going to give you a few of them right off the bat. So, one that you might have heard, stop singing from your throat. Another one, sing from your diaphragm or use your diaphragm when you sing. Another one, place the sound. A lot of singers will be told to place the sound at a certain location in their body. So, probably the most common one is place the sound in the mask. And we don't mean this kind of mask, this kind of like a masquerade mask. Um, we'll talk about if you need to learn classical technique before learning contemporary or pop styles. I grew up with that myth. It was kind of the same thinking of you learn ballet first and then you learn other styles of dance. Um, Singers are born, not made. And the voice is a muscle. So we work it out like a muscle. If you've heard other singing myths, uh, let me know in the comments if you're here live, any things that you would like addressed, but those are the biggest that I've heard. Um, okay, so starting off with stop singing from your throat. This is very confusing for singers because we do sing from our throat. Our voice, our vocal instrument, is housed within our throat. So when you're told don't sing from your throat, then the next question is, where am I supposed to sing from? And am I doing something wrong if I feel sensation in my throat? So let's understand a little bit about vocal anatomy and talk about maybe a better way to think about this advice of not singing from your throat. So, as I just mentioned, your vocal instrument, sometimes we call this your vocal cords or your vocal folds. And hi, Lady K, welcome. That those are the same thing. So vocal cords, cords, or vocal folds are both referring to the tissue and the muscle that comes together and vibrates to make sound. So you can find where that is in your throat if you start running your finger along underneath your chin and then stop when you find a little bump. And sometimes that little bump right there is called the Adam's apple. It's also the anatomical term is your larynx, or your voice box would be the other kind of more conversational term for it. But that is a part of your thyroid cartilage, and that houses and protects your vocal folds. So your vocal folds or vocal cords are situated within your larynx, within that cartilage. Okay, so you're not touching your vocal folds right now. You're just touching a part of your thyroid cartilage, which houses and protects your vocal folds. The vocal folds themselves are super, super tiny. We're talking millimeters here, and they are situated within your larynx, within your throat, like so. So they are connected in the front and open in the back. They vibrate together. Okay, there's two of them. Um, What else do we need to know about the vocal mechanism? Well, your larynx sits atop your trachea, at the top of your trachea. So, this is another myth that the things that you eat or drink are going to touch your vocal folds. Some people will say, oh, yeah, I drink tea or honey, things like that, because it coats my vocal cords or it coats my vocal folds. No, that would not be a good thing if that happened, because remember, your larynx is on top of your trachea, not your esophagus. So if you did drink something and it passed over your vocal folds, it would then go down into your lungs and you would cough. Um, so, anytime we're talking about food or drink and its impact on your singing voice or on your voice, we're talking about the way that it affects your body in general. We're not talking about something actually touching the vocal folds or vocal cords. Okay, so now we know this is where our cords or folds are situated. That's not the only component of your voice. We also have breath that's again coming from our lungs, passing through your throat. Your vocal folds or cords are vibrating together, and that creates the sound wave. The sound wave is then filtered through the rest of your throat and mouth. And sometimes you'll hear that called the vocal tract, TRACT, vocal tract. So, vocal tract just means the rest of your throat above your vocal folds and then your mouth, all the way to your lips. And the size and shape of your vocal tract will impact how you sound. And you can try this with me really easily. Give me an ooh, ooh. And now open your mouth really wide and say, yeah. Again, back to ooh, ooh, yeah, ooh, yeah. Now, we just think of that as saying different words or making different vowels, but also what you're doing there is you're putting your vocal tract, your throat and mouth into a different shape. And that's changing our tone quality, our volume, all sorts of stuff. All right. So, what do people mean? And I see someone mention this in the comments, don't strain. What people mean when they say don't sing from your throat is don't strain or squeeze or tighten your throat. So, what are we supposed to do instead if this is where our vocal instrument is? And this will get to our second point. Usually, what people want you to do when they say don't sing from your throat is they want you to place that effort or tension somewhere lower in the body. And usually, then they'll start talking about the diaphragm. We'll get to that. Um, but essentially, all the advice that I would give instead of saying don't sing from your throat, um, I would say don't imagine that the sound is coming from your throat. Um, when you are exerting more effort, more vocal effort, um, as much as you can, don't focus on your throat. Um, but here's the thing, you are going to feel sensation in your throat, and there's nothing wrong with that. So if you just place your hand on your throat right now and say, hello, hi, and state your name or say good morning or good evening, you're going to feel a ton of vibration here. That's totally normal. Lady K had a question. I struggle to find strength in my singing. I can't sing loudly or walk or sing at the same time. So, Lady K, we're going to talk about the diaphragm and good breath engagement next, and I think that'll help you. But I also want to mention that last week, was it last week? Last week, we talked about strengthening your head voice, but I'm going to see if there's an even better lesson for you. So here's a lesson called How to Strengthen Your Voice. That would be a great one to watch. Um, Troubleshooting voice issues. A weak, breathy voice is in there as well. And last week we talked about building our head voice. So this one might not be as like laser focused on that topic, but I think it'll help you. And then let me see if I have anything on breath, breathing. Okay, so here's a lesson on breath support, but again, we're going to talk about that very shortly. Here's a short lesson. I'm just giving you a lot of links. I hope you can open them up and watch these later. And then breath control for beginners. So the last two links that I posted are shorter videos, and the first 3 to 4 are longer, by the way. Okay. So that advice, stop singing from your throat. Usually it'll lead to some discussion of, okay, where am I singing from? Where should I be feeling more sensation? Remember that sensation is normal in your throat, but if you are feeling squeeze, tightness, pain, those are sensations we don't want to feel in our throat or anywhere in our body. So, what that brings us to next is the advice to sing from your diaphragm. So, again, we're going to get into a little bit of anatomy because this is how we can debunk these myths. Your diaphragm is a thin sheet of muscle. I don't know if my camera is going to show you. So, a thin sheet of muscle right below your lungs. So sometimes people will kind of think that the diaphragm is really low in their body, like their low abdomen. That's not the case. Your diaphragm separates your thoracic cavity from all of your digestive organs. So you can find your ribs, the bottom of your ribs, and kind of trace your ribs going up. And imagine your lungs within your rib cage. Your rib cage protects your lungs. Your diaphragm is this thin, kind of dome like sheet of muscle. It's attached to your ribs. And most of its movement, depending on who you ask, all of its movement is involuntary. Um, so when you inhale, when you breathe in, your diaphragm naturally lowers. It's creating space for your lungs to inflate with air. When you exhale, your diaphragm naturally raises back up to its resting position. So it is dome shaped when it's at rest. When you've exhaled, when you inhale, it's going to lower and flatten. And then again, when you exhale, it's going to rise. So the thought is that we can keep our diaphragm in a slightly lower position by engaging our intercostals, the muscles between our ribs, our low abs, and by keeping our rib cage elevated and expanded for a little bit longer. So if you just breathe naturally in and out, your diaphragm is moving with your lungs. The thing that makes singing different is instead of just expelling our air all at once, we're controlling the release of air. We're sending a steady stream, a steady, smooth stream of air to the vocal folds. So feel this with me. If you take in a breath, you're not going to feel your diaphragm, but you could feel your rib cage. And quick question, can you breathe between phrases if you have a duet? Absolutely. Even if you have a solo, you can breathe between phrases. That's kind of something that makes a phrase is it's a musical sentence and it's usually a good spot to breathe. So yes, answer to that question. The only time you wouldn't be able to breathe between phrases is if you've marked it as a phrase, but there's actually a carrying over happening or a sustain happening, then of course we can't cut a word in half in order to breathe. But if it truly is between phrases, yes, go ahead and breathe. Okay, so try this with me. First, just inhale and exhale, feel your rib cage expand, and then come back to where it was. Inhale Exhale. Okay, this time inhale and then hold your breath just for a second or two. Okay, now exhale. Could you feel that while you were holding your breath, your rib cage was staying where it was? So if the rib cage is staying elevated because the diaphragm is attached to your rib cage, if our rib cage stays elevated and out, our diaphragm stays in that lower flat position for a little bit longer. So the utility there, the function there that we're hoping to train is that if we can train our rib cage to stay expanded, our diaphragm stays low for a little bit longer, then our lungs will not expel their air so quickly, which means we can use that air for longer. So, this is what we can control. We can control our posture, we can control our abdominal engagement, and sort of indirectly, we can encourage the diaphragm to stay in a lower position. But here's the problem with the phrase sing from your diaphragm. When I'm told sing from your diaphragm, what do I do with that information? Usually, what students end up doing is kind of squeezing or hardening their abs because they know vaguely, generally, the diaphragm is somewhere down here. And when they're told sing from your diaphragm, they go, "Okay, should I flex? Should I do a crunch?" So we need to get more specific with our instructions. So this is the first step in just learning how your body naturally handles this air in and out, and then the difference when we sing. So what do we know so far? Good posture, that's a must. Okay, if we're collapsed, no good. But sitting or standing nice and tall, feeling your rib cage expand, come out when you inhale, holding on to that breath, or what we might call suspending that breath for just a second so you can feel your rib cage staying up, and then letting it out. Now we're going to do the same thing. We won't suspend this time. We'll exhale on a hiss. So inhale, feel your ribs come out. Feel that little bit of suspension. Exhale on a hiss. Keep that nice tall posture. Your ribs, by the way, your ribs will eventually come back in, maybe not all the way, but a little bit. You don't need to tense to keep the rib cage just as expanded as it was on the inhale. But the longer we can keep those ribs elevated, again, diaphragm stays in lower position. We don't expel our air quite as fast, which means we can use that air for longer to sing on or to sing with. The other element of breath control that we have, and again, this is very subtle. So if you hear sing from your diaphragm and your instinct is to go, huh, let's break that habit. That probably will not result in a good sound for us. The other thing we have control over is this gentle engagement of our low abs. And sometimes teachers will talk about the pelvic floor as well. But I'm going to focus on the low abs. So if you can find your belly button and then right below your belly button, just place a hand gently there. Low abs right below your belly button. Okay. So now we're going to do that same hiss, and I want you to notice what you feel. We're going to inhale. Oh, actually, first, just for comparison's sake, inhale and exhale normally. Okay, what I felt and what most people feel, but you can let me know if you felt something different, is expansion or coming out and then contraction or coming back in. Try it again. Inhale and exhale. Now, I didn't mention this before, but the belly should be relaxed when we're inhaling. We want expansion. What we don't want, you'll notice each of these breaths that I take, my chest is not going Okay. You don't see professional singers breathing like that. You see them staying in this tall, confident posture, and you see their abs moving when they breathe. So that's what we want. We want the belly to be soft and relaxed so that it moves freely when we inhale. Okay, so what you should be feeling is that lower belly is moving out and then moving back in. And again, let me know if you're feeling something different. Now, if we do that same exhale on a hiss, remember we're trying to keep our rib cage lifted. And now let's see what happens just naturally when we exhale on a hiss and we're feeling the low belly below your belly button. Inhale, exhale, hiss. You don't have to make that breath last forever, but tell me what happened. For me, instead of coming back in, my low belly just kind of stayed where it was. It didn't go out further. It didn't crunch or really harden. It was a very, very subtle feeling of just kind of staying where it was. Um, so both of these things, we're tapping into what happens naturally when we breathe and then exhale on a hiss. Let's see if we can transfer that feeling over now to making sound. And Lady K, let me put that link for you in the chat. And then there was a question on a few songs as well. Um, that's okay. That's all right. So, uh, if it was slowly deflating, that's great because you are still controlling the release of that air. If it deflated as quickly as it did when you just breathed out, then I would say make it a stronger hiss, not a kind of hiss. So try with a stronger hiss and let me know how that went. And then we had questions on never enough, suddenly see more. Let's talk about that later during Q&A. So last 15 minutes of this hour will be Q&A and we'll go to those songs then for you. Um so okay. Strong hiss. See if you felt a difference. Now we're seeing if we can transfer that same feeling onto a hum. So we're going to start on the hiss and then close to a hum. I got this exercise from a teacher I really like, John Henney. So credit to him for this. Rib cage, low belly. If you've got two hands free, then you can place them there. Inhale on a hiss. Sorry, inhale and then exhale, hiss, close to a hum. So it's going to look like this. I'm inhaling, exhale, and I'm seeing if I can feel my ribs stay elevated, my low belly stay more or less where it was, rather than just deflating all at once. And again, you will feel eventual contraction because we're using that air. So you don't need to put the pressure on yourself of, I need to stay rigid and totally expanded. Okay. We're just slowing the release of that air that we're using. Again, so that we can sing on it. Why are we using our belly? Why are we using our rib cage and our low belly? Because if we don't, then we do start to get those sensations of strain and tightness in the throat. Because think of it this way, we've got this air flowing through your vocal folds and your throat. When they feel that air coming, they kind of have two things that they would naturally do. One, they would just let that air pass. And if you're singing, that can result in a weak, breathy tone. Just letting that air pass through. Another thing that they might do is close over and squeeze too much. So if they feel this air coming, they're they're going to try to control that airflow by over squeezing and working harder than they need to. So by employing these bigger muscles down here, again, our intercostals, our low belly beneath our belly button, we're controlling and slowing down that release of air, but we're not involving our throat. We're not giving another job to the throat. We're saying, hey, you've already got a job. Those vocal folds are coming together to make sound. That's enough for you to handle. What if you run out of air? So let me find, I've got another lesson for you. This is on running out of breath while singing. There you go. Um, okay, so when someone tells you, or the next time you hear sing from your diaphragm, now you know where the diaphragm is, what it does, the fact that its movement is not directly consciously controlled by us. However, we can encourage it to stay in a lower position by keeping that rib cage elevated, keeping the diaphragm in its lower flat position for longer so that the lungs don't expel their air quickly and we can use that air for longer. Okay. What all I don't want you to do is hear sing from your diaphragm and then you go huh, and you squeeze your belly. Okay. Next myth, place the sound. Place the sound. Again, you'll hear the advice to place your sound usually in the mask in this area, or they'll say you want to feel buzz in this area or that area. So the problem with this is that every singer is different. That's should sound like a no-brainer, but your voice, your anatomy is different than mine. Um, we're going to experience our voices in different ways. You might feel a lot of sensation in this area, and I might feel none. So, does that mean that you're doing it right and I'm doing it wrong? Not necessarily. We can't be guided by sensation alone. It's just not reliable. So, rather, sensation's important, but I try very, very hard to not prescribe that to students or tell them this is where you should feel the sound if you're doing it correctly. Um, we'll be guided more by sound quality, and then we'll ask, okay, when you got that sound that we were going for, um, where did you feel sensation? And then that can be a useful tool. Um, in the very, very beginning of my teaching journey, because I had been taught that way, I would use the kind of prescriptive place the sound sort of terminology. Um, and it works for some students and it just doesn't work for others. Um, so Lady K was saying if I sing really high, I can feel it in my nose. And yeah, that might not be the case for another singer. So I experience this with my students all the time. We'll be working on a specific sound and then I'll ask them, "Okay, are there any sensations that you're associating with that sound?" Um there we go. So that might be a really common thing of feeling more sensation in your nose when you're singing high. And in fact, we do know that generally your sensation of that sympathetic vibration is going to move up your body. In fact, in a very first voice lesson, we'll usually talk about the distinction between chest voice and head voice. And we'll have you place your hand on your chest and say, "Hey, hello." And you're going to feel a lot of vibration on your chest. And then say woo-hoo, woo-hoo, high pitched or woo, woo, like an owl. And for me, I really don't feel anything when I do that. Woo, woo. But I don't feel that vibration on my chest anymore. Um, so again, it does vary from singer to singer, but generally, The lower the pitch is, you're going to feel it more in your chest, more in your throat. And then as the pitch rises, you'll probably feel more sensation up higher in your body. The problem is, though, that those sensations up high in the body are often pretty subtle. They're definitely not as strong as that vibration on the chest for most people. And that's why head voice can be a little more difficult to find at first. Um, so, Pisanach, when I sing high, I don't breathe. I'm straining a lot. You need to breathe. You need to breathe all the time when you're singing. We got to breathe. Um, Lady K sing, I don't really need to breathe to sing high or need breath to sing high. You probably don't need as much breath, but you still need breath. Um, so if you're not breathing and that's leading to strain, breathe more often. Try that. That sounds like an easy fix to me. Okay. So, again, the whole thing about placement sort of falls apart because each singer's body, their anatomy is different, as well as their perception and their body awareness. Um, so, I'd rather be guided by sound and then ask, okay, when I make that sound that I was going for, is there a specific sensation I can attach to that to help me in my practice? Whether or not that sensation is the same as another singer's or your teacher's. Next myth, you have to learn classical technique first. Like I mentioned before, I was raised with that. I was told you have to learn classical technique because that's the foundation of all other types of singing. In fact, it is not the foundation of all other types of singing. Classical singing, classical technique, usually we are talking about Western European, um, kind of what we would think of as more operatic style or church singing. Um, and if we just stopped for 2 seconds to think about how narrow that is, we would have realized, oh, yeah, the whole world, people all over the world sing and are not influenced by Western European classical music. Um, so, because we have such strong ties between classical music in Europe and the United States, perhaps that's where that came from, at least here. But if we think about it for, like I said, 2 seconds, then we realize that logic falls apart. Um, People have been singing around the world for all time, and singing well, singing, in a sustainable way. So, classical technique can be very useful, uh, but it's also a style. It sets you up for a specific style and sound. Um, so the issue is, and by the way, don't get mad. If you're a classical singer or teacher, just know I love classical technique. I use classical technique and have benefited greatly from it. And even when I say classical technique, there's many, many different definitions. I kind of mean the bel canto, sort of setting you up for more of a choral, classical art song, operatic sound. Okay. Um, so it's great. There's a place for it, but do you need to start with it? No. Um, and what I saw happen, and what probably a lot of us have seen happen, is someone will train classically and then they'll only do classical songs. They won't branch out into other styles. Um, so they don't learn how to sing in those other styles. Classical technique, generally speaking, it's going to give you uh, strong breath support, strong vibrato, a well-developed head voice if you're a higher voiced singer. Um, but it probably, unless you have a teacher who's familiar with multiple styles, it's probably not going to give you much in the way of other contemporary techniques. Um, the most common issue, and this is one that I ran into, the most common issue you'll see, especially for higher voiced singers, is an underdeveloped chest voice, an underutilized chest voice. Um, and so then your options when singing are pretty limited. When you're getting into head voice range or medium range, all you know how to do is switch into head voice. And that's not stylistically appropriate when you want a more belty sound, a more contemporary sound. Again, there are teachers that can help you do both. But if you go to someone who is marketing themselves as a classical teacher, um, they are, exclusively classically trained. They sing classical music and not much else. Then that's probably the sound that you're gonna get, because that's their area of expertise. So if you want to sing contemporary music, get with a teacher who does teach contemporary styles. Contemporary technique is different. There's more chest voice development, more of a chest dominant mix in those middle pitches rather than a head dominant sound. Um, as well as a lot of different stylistic techniques, use of vocal fry, pop flip, riffs and runs, grit, distortion, tons of things that you will never learn uh, singing classical art songs and operatic songs. So, anyways, um, a few questions. Nostron, when I sing, I try to rely mostly on my stomach for breathing, but still my neck strains. Even when I just try to focus on my stomach to breathe with, I again strain in my neck. My back would also hurt. I think it's because I'm squeezing my stomach. How can I not do that? It's always tough to answer questions like this without hearing and seeing you. Um, However, I would say there could be reasons that we are feeling some strain in our throat uh, that are not connected to your breath. Um, so if our vowel is overly closed, if we're singing with um, too much volume, if something is off in our position, so let's say our jaw is too open or too closed. Let's say our tongue is retracting and kind of pushing down on our larynx. There are many things that could be happening and causing that feeling of strain that again are not directly connected to or influenced by the breath. I know our instrument is interconnected, everything connects and influences one another. However, it's not just breath that could be the reason for strain. Um, so, um, Lady K is saying, I'm a high singer and I can't really sing low at all. I'm trying, but it's super hard. I can do mix, but I tend to bring my chest voice up. Um, So, my advice to you would be to use your speaking voice more within those lower pitches. So, to not think about singing those really low notes, but just speaking them. Um, Let me see if I have anything on range extension for you that would be helpful. Actually, I have just a video. One second. Here you go. So, this is Sing Lower in 5 Easy Steps. Check that out. The short one. And George, yes, I am in San Diego. Um, and then Madhu is asking, I really need some advice on pitch. Okay, I have videos for you as well. One second. I did 2 weeks a while back. This was intonation practice week 1. And then this is intonation practice week 2. I would watch both of those. Um, And George is saying, I'm really trying to follow Adele's vocal range. I feel as if I relate closer to her singing style. Okay. So, George, if that range feels comfortable for you, great. If not, though, I would encourage you to potentially change the key, still go for that style, but in a key that feels better for your voice. Because Adele's range and her style are two different things. You can capture some of the same, energy, emotion, techniques within a range that feels good for you. Um, Okay, I'm going to run through our last two myths in my last 5 minutes of myth busting, and then we'll get to all these great questions you guys have. So the fifth myth is that singers are born, not made. I hate this one with a passion, uh, because there is a grain of truth to it, and that's what's tricky. Um, because we can't say that genetics and anatomy have nothing to do with your singing ability. Of course they do. Uh, but they're not everything. And I think about it, I try to get other people to think about it in the same way that we think about different sports. Um, so you could say this person is just a born runner or a born swimmer, whatever it is. If they have the body type for it, then they will excel in that specific sport more than a person like me who is not a born athlete. um, so that's an element, but would that person reach their full potential without learning and training and dedicated practice? No, absolutely not. And even for me, not set up to be a runner or a swimmer necessarily, but should that prevent me from learning, training, dedicated practice? Um, no. If I want to and I'm dedicated, then that's great. So I really dislike when we think of singing as this kind of all or nothing thing, born with it or just hopeless. Because it's a physical skill and a mental skill. Yes, genetics and anatomy are involved, but as with anything, you need to learn, you need to practice. Um, and that's the other issue with this myth because we see singers who seems like they were born to sing. They've been singing for a really long time, but we don't really count that as training. We think, oh, they just have a great voice. But what you don't see or don't acknowledge is from day one, they were raised with music in the house. They were singing from age, 3. They've been singing in church or with their family or whatever, just alone in their room. Um, so I don't want to discredit all of that time that we don't really think of as formal training, but it is training. Um, so, anyways, um, thanks, George. It's something I'm passionate about because what really breaks my heart is when people think if it doesn't come naturally to them that it's just not worth doing and they can't improve, and that's just not true. We don't think that way about any other skill. So it just doesn't make sense to me why we put singing in this special category. Um, okay. And then lastly, this myth you'll hear the voice is a muscle. So you just need to strengthen that muscle. The voice is not just a muscle. The voice involves many, many tiny muscles, but the voice is also soft tissue. The voice is also cartilage. The voice, uh, again, your voice is not just your vocal folds. Your voice's function involves your breath, your lungs, your diaphragm, your abdomen, um, all of the muscle, tissue, cartilage within your actual larynx. And then above that, you have your mouth. What do we call that? There's bone, there's more muscle, your tongue, that makes a huge difference in your sound. So the voice is not just one muscle that if we do our bicep curls, we get a nice strong bicep, you know. Um, it's more complex than that. The voice does involve muscle, but it's more about coordination, uh, and it's multifaceted. So, uh, while practice time is important, putting in the time, um, your technique, what you're doing with that time is even more important than just the amount of time you put in. So, what I don't want you to think is, oh, well, if I just, do exercises for however long or sing for however long, my voice will get stronger. It might get stronger, or you might just be using it and not really applying specific technique to help you reach your goals. So, anyways, that's why we learn. That's why we're here. And then I have an interesting blog post that, if you want, you can check out. So um, this is a blog post by another teacher. Her name's Maddie Tarbox. I found her on TikTok and really like her. Great coach. And this blog article I just posted is 10 principles of training, like training the body that also apply to training the voice. So if you are kind of more of an athletic training type of person and want to apply those same principles to your vocal training, I think you'll enjoy that article. Um, so that goes along with the whole idea of the voice is a muscle. um, and George was asking any chance for in-person vocal lessons. Not at this point. I'm sorry. I'm still teaching over Zoom, um, but no in person for the foreseeable future. Here's the link for booking with me if you wanted to, though, online. Hi, Austin's music, and so we are now in Q&A time. And yeah, George brought up the fact that Ed Sheeran said he couldn't sing when he was younger and even played. I've seen some YouTube videos where he's like on a talk show or something and he plays evidence of how far he's come with his vocal skills, and that's so inspirational. Uh Absolutely. So, what advice do you have for the songs Little Shop of Horrors and Never Enough? I don't know A Billion Sorries. I've never heard of that song. Um, so, Little Shop of Horrors and Never Enough. Little Shop less so, but it is still a little bit belty. And then Never Enough for sure has a lot of belting. Um, I actually watched a while ago pretty helpful video on this song, and I'm gonna send you the link right here. This is a voice teacher, Freya Casey. She did a lesson on how to sing Never Enough, and I think it's really helpful. So I'm gonna put that in the chat for you. Never Enough lesson. Um, Generally, I would say for those songs that establishing a nice, strong chest dominant mix is going to serve you well. Um, Harry's saying, I'm doing your beginner program. I'm practicing a song I want to sing, but I want to ensure my voice matches the musical instrument sounds. Any tips or resources to recommend? Um, cool. Okay. Harry, yes. Um, I'm just racking my brain real quick. I'm thinking of what to search for here. Okay. So Harry, I think this video will help you. Harry, there you go. Um, I would say first. Oh man, sorry. I'm trying to read questions and answer them at the same time. Um, First, ensure that the song is in a comfy key for you. So if you have the awareness that you're matching pitch well when you're singing along with the singer, then great. Um, and then as for how to make that transition to singing with the karaoke track, a really good tool to use is vocalremover.org. There you go. So, why that's helpful is you can take the original track, you're singing along, you're matching pitch, everything's going great, and then you can just turn down the volume of the lead vocal, but keep the instrumental where it is. That way, you're kind of like weaning yourself off of singing along with the original singer. Um, Another thing that you can do would be to analyze the pitch and just get your starting pitches for, let's say, the verse and the chorus. Um, Example, Hey Jude. Oh, my keyboard's not plugged in or it's not making sound. Okay. Well, anyways, um, we'll deal with that later. Um, Hey Jude starts on C4. So if you can listen to that, find the pitch either on a piano app or a chromatic tuner, then you would know, okay, Hey Jude starts on C4. I'll use my chromatic tuner to make sure that I am also starting on C4. That way, at least you get off on the right foot. But yeah, I highly recommend using Vocal Remover, upload the track, and then turn down the volume of the lead. Um, Lady K was asking, how do I judge my own singing voice? I've tried recording, but I can't stand my own recorded voice. I understand. Um, I understand completely. I would say two pieces of advice for you. One is just to record often because you will get take art because everyone hates the sound of recorded voice in the beginning, myself included. When I say everyone, maybe there's people who are like, yeah, it's fine. But the vast majority of people hate to listen to their own voice. So do it often and you'll get over it. Second thing, though, would be record yourself, maybe singing along with the track, singing along even with the original. And you can look up some free apps or websites where you can put a little bit of editing on your vocals, just some preset kind of voice filters, things like that. The reason being, when you listen to your voice and it's just on your phone, it's a cappella, it's unedited, it there's nowhere to hide, you know? Um, so if you can throw a little bit of editing on there, soften up the sound, give a little reverb, a little EQ, now it's gonna sound better. It's gonna sound better and it won't be so like harsh to listen to. um, George was asking about breath control, singing while doing cardio. Yeah, it's a great idea. People on Broadway and, professional touring singers do that. So I think it's a great idea. Joshua is saying, my mix above B flat 4 sounds really heady. I don't know what to do. For more chest, it's loud and powerful, but heady till E5. So, Joshua, I would recommend that around that point, you start to let your mouth widen a little bit. So typically we think of getting into mix, we narrow, and then as you're ascending, you widen back out. So it could be right now that your vowel is just too narrow. So I would try letting your mouth widen, think going from like to perhaps, and see if that allows you to hold on to some of that chest voice quality up high in your mix. And if you already got some questions answered, if you're duetting with someone, do you have to match their pitch? No, as Joshua said, you can harmonize with them, but do you have to match some pitch? Yes. um, so I would say, to add on to that advice, um, typically the way that we're building harmony is we're listening to the instrumental and we're finding other pitches to sing within it. Um, let's see if we have anything. And I just got another question. If you lost your voice, how do you recover from it? The very first thing you do is you rest. You give your voice rest. Um, but let's get you some more advice. So this is how to sing when your voice is recovering. There you go. Thanks, Lady K. I look forward to that. Um, and then Austin was asking, how do you find harmonies? So I'm seeing if I have any videos on that. Okay. There are actually quite a few. I can link them all, but if you just type into your YouTube search bar harmonize or harmony 30-day singer, um, you'll find a lot of videos, but here, I'm gonna link them for you. So this is a short video, how to sing vocal harmony, part 1, and then part 2, ear training for harmony. So Austin, this would be a good one for you to watch, since you asked how do you find harmonies. And how we find harmonies typically is kind of analyzing the melody, the shape of the melody, and then listening to the chords, because the chords are going to give you other options of pitches that are going to fit and sound good with the melody. But we need to train our ear to recognize those pitches, not necessarily to name them, to say, like, oh, that's a G or that's a D. But to be able to pick them out. So if you do hear a pitch being played by the keyboard, by the guitar, you can pick that out, and that's a potential part for you to sing, as long as it's not the same as the melody. Um, here's another helpful one. It's called Easy Vocal Harmony. Harmony practice for beginners. Like I said, lots of stuff on harmony. If you've got if you just type in harmony 30-day singer, all of these videos come up, but I've linked them there for you as well. Does powering your breathy falsetto till it's strong count as mixed voice? That's a great question. I would say technically no, but could it give you a strong head voice sound? So strong that we might call it a head dominant mix? Sure. So the question is, ooh, if I just strengthen within that zone, ooh, but that's still really more of a head voice sound. Um, you can shape it a little bit differently. Yeah. So it starts to sound a little bit more mixy, but um, that's that will not get you to a chest dominant mix. So, yes, Joshua, that could get you to a head dominant mix, but to a chest dominant mix for like a really belty sound, no. Not in my experience. You've got to kind of work from chest voice in order to get there. Um, every singer is different. I wouldn't want to say no, never, but in my experience, no, that'll just get you into a strong head voice or head dominant mix. And cool, we're talking about tea. um, all right. So Last question. I'm currently on tour and I use my voice a lot. What advice do you have? Um, Rest, vocal rest as much as possible. Really tricky when you're in a fun environment with other people to talk to, but your voice needs rest when it's being used a lot. So any chance you get, no speaking or singing, and then make sure that you're doing a gentle warm up and a cool down. So after your set or whatever, cool down with some of the same exercises that you might have used for a gentle warm up. You can search all over this channel for warm ups and cool downs. So just search warm up 30-day singer. You'll see ones in different vocal, like voice types, like alto, mezzo, soprano, whatever feels like an easy fit for you. And then also search cool down. Um, let's see, cool down or warm down. Um, All right, my friends, I've got to sign off, but thank you so much for being here. I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.